Hi, I'm Ed Parcaut, your host of Inner Edison. And what I'd like you to take away from today's show is our greatest growth comes from our greatest failures. Today's guest is Dorothy Kolb, and let's welcome her and get to know her journey. How you doing, Dorothy? Did I get it
Hi.
right?
You did get it right. I'm
Yeah.
great, Ed. How are you?
I'm actually really good. It couldn't be any better, I guess.
Excellent.
I don't know how.
You're living
But
the
again,
life.
that's right. Multiple podcasts like you, all that good stuff keeps you busy. The more busier I find myself, the more things I can get done.
That is indeed true.
Right.
Although sometimes it backs up a bit and I get a little crazy, but
Right. But then you find somebody like I do to take that over. And
yes,
then my, we'll get in. Let me just say a line. And then my coach always goes, I help you take things off your plate. You're not supposed to put it back, something else in its place. Right.
oh, you're not?
Yeah. I'm like, the whole purpose of me to help me get that out of here and figure this out is so I can add something else to get something else going. That's the whole purpose, the reason I have you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't think they understand.
No, well, they're just getting you off their plate.
It could be. Just so they can send an invoice every month.
Yep,
Uh, Dorothy, my listeners aren't going to really know who you are, what you do. So you want to give a little background?
I sure will. So I am a fractional CFO, which means that I offer chief financial officer strategy, business, not development, but business strategies, accounting strategies for small to a little bit bigger than small size businesses in the creative and podcast production space
So you only do CFO work for podcasts and production based people. Is that what I'm
and
hearing?
creative agencies, right?
And great. All right. So
hmm
you don't do fractional CFO for mortgage companies or for any other industry.
I don't. I can. I would do other professional services, but I'd like to leave that to those who know what they're doing in those specific things like mortgage industry.
No, because I only throw that out there because we have accountants and we have horrible bookkeepers because you never have it's hard to find a really good bookkeeper,
Agree.
right? You're shaking your
hmm
head. She's shaking her head. She agrees. I just wish that the accounting firm, most of them would handle that, but they don't want to handle that. They only want to handle what they do well, which is the setting, looking at the books, making sure that and move forward, not putting the information in. And I think that's this whole service that someone needs to really take over real well. And I'll get off my soapbox here in a second, but that's just something I see as a problem because one of the issues you run into is unless you have a full-time CFO to go over your stuff and make sure that you're set up to where you don't pay all these extra taxes, then what happens is a sole proprietor, or not really sole proprietor, but a corp, a LLC or whatever, you're going to all of a sudden the owners are going to take a K1 if it's S corp of all this money that they didn't realize they were getting, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I know a few. I have a few really good referrals for bookkeeping services, and then outside of that, it like drops off significantly. It's really, it's really hard to find really good bookkeepers that don't just do it by rote and don't really think about it.
Because I had one that did it for me, and then all of a sudden I actually had all this money that I owed the company, right?
Oh, that's
Because
nice.
yeah, they kept putting it like it was a with a owner take, and it's like
Distribution or
yeah,
yeah,
and it's like no, this was for this, and it was a nightmare.
yeah, I
So
bet.
and we'll get into, but it's really important that you have the right people in place, bookkeepers, accountants. But let's talk about you instead of me being on my soapbox and my problems.
What would you like to know? I actually I love to explain the CPA, bookkeeper, CFO breakdown when I'm talking to people because it's so often that everybody thinks that they're just one person or they're a conglomerate of a person that they, can't quite figure out what everybody does. So,
Well, it is in a startup, right? Or there's usually one person that does everything, and then eventually you separate that out, possibly, right? Or you hire that out. Like I've hired out accountants forever since I got started in San Diego in the mortgage industry because I don't want somebody inside that doesn't know everything that's going on or any new changes that they've done. And one of the issues is the company I use, they back in the, I'm going to date myself, but back in the 90s when we did a ton of business and we got real, they were dealing with ball players. And so they knew how to set up certain things that they would for those guys who made a lot of money for us to set up so we could have the same benefits too. Where if you have your own person possibly inside, you're not going to get that same benefit. So somebody like yourself that's a fractional where you work with multiple companies, you can help out a lot more companies, one, and two, get more information that you could help out the next company. Right.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, absolutely. Um, you have the benefit of the more breadth of exposure to different scenarios than you would just working for one company. But I would say, I think a lot of people confuse, CPA, tax person with the bookkeeper. The bookkeeper's not going to know taxes for the most part. It'll be rare to find somebody. If they knew taxes that well, they'd be doing taxes instead. So I think it's really important to differentiate what you're loading onto whom so that you're not expecting a bookkeeper to do a bunch of tax work and you're not expecting your tax advisor to dig into your books and do the transactional work.
So do you want to get into that a little deeper? Because it sounds like you want to kind of explain that.
I mean, that's as far
That's
as
as
I was
far as you
going to
want to
go
go.
with it. But
Okay. Well, I mean, and also a lot of people don't understand CPA, EA,
correct.
right? And so those two different, CPA is EA is an authorized agent with the IRS, so they do taxes, right? Basically,
Just taxes, right?
right, just taxes. And then there's tax preparers, which aren't even really licensed, right?
Right. Yeah. There's
Yeah.
there's no requirement that you have to be licensed to prepare someone's taxes. To represent them in front of the IRS, sure, you need to be an enrolled agent or a CPA, but to just do someone's taxes, yeah, I mean, anybody could do and someone's taxes, which is really scary on that
Right.
part. But
Because they won't be there with you when the IRS calls and says,
no,
"Hey, how come you did this deduction?" Where with a large company CPA, they're going to be there because they're the ones who told you to do this, right, or
right.
helped you do it. So they're going to be there to help. And what I think, and it might change now because the things with IRS and everything with the government, they're changing everything. But I think most of the time they go look for people who don't have CPAs, who don't have other people doing their books. They're looking for people who did their own books, or they look for people who are a sole proprietor who is a smaller sole proprietor, so they can come to them and you owe us $5,000, and they're not going to get somebody to help them. They're just going to pay it. I could be totally wrong, but I just feel that they go after the middle of the road that they know they can bite on, that they're not going to get fought. Or if they went to somebody who has a large accounting firm, they know they're going to have a fight and it's going to be a while to go through all the books. I'm not saying they don't audit everybody. I'm just saying it just seems
No,
that they choose and
yeah,
pick who to go after.
I just had a client go through an audit recently for a few years ago. I think it was like 17, 18 or 18, 19 or something. And they, the more detail, and I should give this like little trick away, but the more detail you give, we gave them a huge like boxes of stuff to go through. And I think at some point they're like, all right, great, fine. You look like you know what you're doing with this one, but as long as you look like I mean, this is unofficial. Don't ever hold me to
Right,
this,
right.
but it felt like the more paperwork you sent, and they wanted it in paperwork form. No, can't email it, can't do it. It had to be all like boxed up and sent off to them. I'm like, God love the person who's going through all this stuff. But it ended up with no adjustment, no additional taxes. So I guess we did something right with them.
There you go. And the whole thing is you want to disclose and what and if they don't like how you did it, that's okay, right? It's if you don't disclose the income, they come after you, and they really hate that, and they
Oh
really
yeah,
come after you.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
Enough about the war. So I guess it is close to Halloween, I guess. So I guess this is a scary topic to talk about.
There you go.
All right. All right. So what? All right. So your normal day that with what? So basically, what is what you do? A CFO. What does a fractional CFO does besides the fact that fractional means you take part of your time for multiple companies?
Right.
What does a CFO do that's different than a CPA or a bookkeeper?
Well, I like to explain it as bookkeepers and CPAs. Well, not CP. I don't want to lump that. Bookkeepers and tax advisors look, for the most part, backward. Right? They're looking at what has already happened up until today. CFOs look from today forward. So we're looking at how do you take from today and get to where you want to be in 2023? What do we have to do? What revenue do you need to bring in? What expenses do you need to have or cut back on? We look at cash flow forecasting to figure out how much cash you have now, how much cash you'll have in 6 months, in 24 months. We get super involved with series rounds. If you have friends and family rounds, you might have a fractional CFO come in early, to help you figure out how you're going to present your information to, investors. Series A round for sure. And then of course, as you go farther down, the CFO might come in house at that point. But we really look forward and help you get to where you want to go. And it's a bunch of scenario modeling. If I bring in this product and not that product, or if I hire this person now, or can I hire this person in 6 months? And if I do, what's that going to look like? So it's really helping them move to their goal from a financial perspective.
And for those of you listening, if you don't understand the different series he's talking about, basically that's when they're actually getting funds to put into your company, correct? When you're
Yes.
going
So when you're
funding.
first going out there, like looking for investors. Yep.
Yeah, not everybody's going to know that, so I just thought
I'm
I'd help
sorry.
them
Thank
out.
you.
No, it's just I was like, "Oh, what's that?" I'm just kidding. So I'm luckily I've been around that because I'm close to the Bay Area. So we've been around many different types of scenarios, and I've known a lot of people who went through those kind of things and what they, I didn't understand it at first, and then I got involved with a couple of different companies, and you're like, wow, that's different than where I come from and what we do. We normally just build it over time because we have no real overhead with our costs of what we do, right? Because we have a loan. Well, there's no cost for that loan for us except for a credit report and the employees working on it. So it's cash in. We don't have a product that we have to bring in, buy it, and then resell, and we get the difference. So
Right.
it's different how we look at things and other companies look at. We're more of a service.
Right.
So,
Right.
but let's get to what you said you do podcasts. I don't
I
mean your podcast. I mean, where you help you're a fractional CFO for podcasting companies or actual
Yes.
individual podcasters.
Podcast companies. So when a podcast company would be someone who is producing several or many podcasts for others, and it becomes a production house. Like my background is in television and broadcasting entertainment, so it was kind of an easy transition to podcasting. And so it's looking at what each individual podcast as a production is going to cost, what you're going to charge for it. There's studio time. There's like different direct costs, like things that are required for you to get that out the door than there would be for other industries. And so it's really looking at how much does it cost to get that production done, and distributed and out, and how much you're going to charge for it. And especially if it's like a series over, some of them are not, they're, I just lost the word for what I was thinking it was called. But it's not a
Make one
one-off.
up.
Yeah, right. It's not a one-off each one. It's like a series like you're watching on TV, right? So each
Mhm.
one like has to be delivered as a whole series at the end of a certain amount of time. And so your revenue stream might be a lot different in selling that than it would be if you're just, if you've monetized your podcast and you're getting sponsors per each podcast. So it's and taking that to figure out when the cash comes in and when the cash goes out is kind of an intricate, little dance that you have to figure out how to do.
So if you're going to become a production house, right? Let's just say example. I'll give an example. I know a company called Big Hangry Media. Anyway, and it has multiple podcasts and it has multiple trademarks underneath it. That because I mean, I was told don't have an individual own a trademark, have a company own a trademark, right?
Mhm.
The company hasn't really made any money because it's all early stage and what they're doing. We do, but you needed something to own your media, right? That we
Mhm.
produce. We produce. We put out at least one podcast a week for Inner Edison. I do have Helping the Brave, which is a totally different one, helping vets once we take the uniform off. And that's twice a week. We put that out twice a week. And so there's a bunch of stuff, but it hasn't got to the point where it's monetized. When do you get to so let's just because you help companies fractionally get to where they want to be. How does somebody at what point do they monetize it, or are you only looking at monetizing what the cost is to produce that for that company? You follow me?
You're right. Well, typically for me, for working with the podcast production company, they're not necessarily owning the actual podcast themselves. So their revenue is you come in and you say, hey, DK East Associates, we want you to be the studio and produce it, and we will pay you to do that, the editing, the producing, the getting the guests and all that. And then, but my cost will be whatever production people I have, the studio time, if I'm, either amortizing it because I bought the stuff or I'm renting it because I'm using another space, and figuring out how much profit do I want to make at the end of that, as opposed to a podcast monetization, which would be you finding a sponsor for your podcast, which of course comes after you've hit, enough downloads and you've got
Like
enough
10,000
audience. And yeah,
downloads or
it's
something.
just
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, you can find stuff where sometimes where you have less than that and you just say, okay, sponsor me for the whole season because I'm super cool and you want to be part of it. And it's nothing that will, sustain a business.
No. I mean, and that's the one thing about podcasting is a lot of people going, I want to get into it, make money. And it's like, well, that's the wrong reason to get into it. You want to get into it to get your voice out and your message and what you're trying to do. And then hopefully that turns into, well, actually, you need to figure out why you're doing it. I do what I do to get information out so that people can understand, so they can make educated decision, like on the radio when I do my radio show, and then I do the lives from that. That's to get education out. That actually helps me with my business by getting that education out. Inner Edison is a love of the fact that I love small business. I love being in business. I like to help people in business, and I want to help people understand that you're going to make mistakes along the way. You're going to mess up. And talking about money, that's one of the biggest mistakes people make, is not having enough, or doing it in the wrong place, or not having someone do their taxes, or having the right bookkeeper do their thing properly, because they think they're going to put it in the right spot when they don't. And next thing you know, you have a couple $100,000 in additional income you didn't plan on taking.
Right. Exactly.
And then you got a tax bill of $50,000 because, anyway, we'll move on.
You sound like you're speaking from experience.
I've been see, that's why I tell people, it's like, I have no judgment, because if it's happened to you, it's happened to me. I've been in business since, I don't know, I was 27, right? I worked for a company. That company in 18 months went under because I got and then I started a mortgage company with another guy, and we worked together for years, and we ran companies. And then when I moved up here in 2002, we separated because it was too far away and I got tired of doing all the work. So I started my own independent. It's true. Usually when you have two partners, one's doing a lot more work than the other partner is, right?
Yep.
And it gets to a point where, so you have to, and that's one of my past episodes was the guy was talking. It was actually the guy with Rob Angel, Pictionary. He was talking about his partners. And so I stayed on how he got his partners. He figured out how he found those people, and he knew they were the right people, right? Because that's important to know if you're getting a partner, is how to figure that out. So, but with you is, what I'm hearing is you know how to help companies that do the production for podcasts to make more money, understand how to grow. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. And the same thing with creative agencies. I work with creative agencies that are primarily in the social impact space, which doesn't mean that they can't, make money. And it's really helping them figure out how to price their projects, how to price their packages and their contracts, so that they are covering their expenses and still making a profit at the end of the day. And so many business owners will just look at what's in the bank account, right? They're like, well, I still have a balance, so I'm still good. And they're not looking far enough ahead to figure out, I had that balance today, but I forgot that I had like this really big, payroll that's running in another week. And, it's helping them figure that out. And the other thing that I really like to do is I don't walk in and take over and say, this is what you're doing. I come in and I say, look, you're going to learn, because at some point when I've, made myself obsolete, it will be because I have taught you enough to know how to do this stuff. Maybe not do the accounting, but understand the financials, understand the ratios, understand what to look for. So if it's not me helping you, you're doing it yourself, or you're working with somebody else and they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So it's really a lot about education, not just I come in and I do it and I hand you a report every month and I go, okay, have a nice day. Bye-bye.
For me, it's different because I'm a numbers guy, right? So I have the numbers, even though they say you need to have it here, and go over. I know the numbers before I even see them on there. It's just weird. And my staff will ask me something, then I'll tell them. They're like, how do you know that? That's just how I work. I'm weird. All right. So
yep.
I'm not a Rain Man. I'm not the movie Rain Man kind of guy, but it just works with, I can figure out how to break things down small and understand what they're doing. So, but for us, I deal with a lot of business owners, and we look at their profit and loss and their balance sheet and understand where they're at. And a lot of people don't understand where they're at,
They
right?
don't.
What are you talking about? I had one guy, they had a 1.3 million in personal, where you take the ownership, where you take money from the,
Distributions?
thank you. Yeah. That they had like a loan, right? That's against the company. It's like, and then you show that you have a profit of 200,000 on your balance sheet. That means you're broke, right? Because
Yeah.
technically you owe $900,000,
Yeah, definitely.
right?
And it's even that they got into that position that they didn't quite get how that happened, or, how could they have avoided that? It's
I know how they
amazing.
can avoid it now. They just open a new corporation.
There you go. There's
Right?
that.
Just don't close out that company, move on, open a new one, new name, new everything. That's,
Mhm.
I mean, and if you don't
There's that.
understand that, watch those. Have you ever seen the series Suits?
Yeah, I
All
have.
right. During that period, like at the end, I don't know if you've seen the whole thing, but they're attorneys, and they were changing their partnership. They were at the end changing everything, new name, new everything, to protect themselves, to get rid of liability. You need to do the same. If you're in a situation where you need to do, don't say, "Oh, this is my baby." It's just a name. Get a new name. No big deal. No one cares. Or get a DBA of that, your name, onto the next corporation and move on.
Yeah. I mean, it works for the top 1%. It can work for all the rest of us.
Yeah. Once I saw that, I was like, I knew everybody did that, but now you're showing on a show that everybody does it because you're based out of attorneys in in New York and all that stuff. So, all right, enough about me. No, I like having a conversation with my guests, not just tell me everything and just sit here, right?
Yeah,
So,
no, please.
because I'm listening to, and I'm still intrigued by the fractional going, because I know somebody I want to get you hooked up with. They started a media company. I know who, and I don't know if they have a CFO. I'm pretty sure 9 times out of 10, I can guarantee you they don't. It's just them. And it would be good that they had somebody to help them, right?
No,
So,
thanks. Appreciate that. No,
no,
it's
I
it's
mean,
fun. I love it. I mean, I my career has taken me out of accounting. I started with Deloitte way back. I think we had green ledger paper when I started with Deloitte. To really date myself with that. But I left that and went into production and operations and programming in television. So it gives me that perspective where I'm not just looking at it as dollar signs, because so often accountants, CFOs, whatever, it's numbers on a page. They have no idea. If I tell you you got to slash your production budget by, 50%, okay, they don't know what that means. Well, that means that now I can't produce whatever that is. So I come at it with a perspective of understanding what those adjustments will do to the end product. And it's similar with creative, because I work with creative agencies who are in kind of an experiential space, right? So they're events and things like that, not just, creating websites or branding or things like that. And so that's very similar um, industry space. So it's the same thing. Understanding what it takes to get that event done. What does it take to get that production aired? So and I love it because I can't, I'm not working in that space anymore because I'm a single mom. I got a boatload of kids and I don't want to be gone from the house, 18 hours a day. So this allows me to, be back in it to some extent without working for one of the big, you know, NBC kind of companies.
right. And you're able to control who you work for.
And I'm able to control who I work for. Yes.
Yeah, that's the most important thing right there. Have control
Hmm.
over what you want to do. So,
Hmm.
as a fractional CFO, how do you get paid? Do you get paid by the hour, by the job? How does that work?
Usually I get paid on a monthly retainer. And it depends on what kind of services or how much time you want. And it's not an hourly commitment, but it's just basically how much you want of me. Do you want me to just go over your financials with you and do a quick projection for what's coming up? Or do you want me to sit in on your stakeholder meetings with investors or lenders? Do you want me to help you prepare a package to go get a new line of credit? That's a little bit more. Or do you want me to just, go, okay, yeah, your bookkeeper's doing a good job? Um, or even, do you want me to just work with you on this one thing, this one small little project? I'll do that for I have a strategy session. Just bring your idea. Let's talk about it for an hour. And there's no more commitment after that. So it depends on what you're looking for.
But you don't have any basic numbers.
Oh, you
You
want
don't have
basic
to say. You don't have to say.
numbers?
Let's just say that I wanted to have a strategy session with you over something, right? Just as an example, is that going to be $10,000 or is
No,
that going
and
to
actually
be
that's right on my, you book it right on my Calendly, so it's $400 for a
yeah?
strategy session.
See, then now we got it. And then is that strategy session 30 minutes, an
It's an hour.
hour? Okay, so
Yeah.
you're about $400 an hour. No,
For
I'm
that
just
stuff, yeah.
yeah, that's easy, and I guess that means more for other stuff.
It does.
No,
I
I
mean,
mean it's important, and I'm not saying that you. I just want to. If somebody want to do a strategy after they heard this show and they want to
mhm.
see what they can do, they can. If they you send them a link, what's the best way to get a hold of you? If somebody heard you on here and they go, I want to get in touch with Dorothy, how do I get in touch with her?
My website's probably the best way. I'm also on Instagram, but my website's probably the best way to get a hold of me. You can see all my background and how to get in touch with me.
What's your website? Because I don't
D
see it in your background.
oh, you're right. Yours is up in my corner. DKEast.com.
Okay, so just dkeast.com.
Yep,
All right,
that's it.
check her out. You can actually schedule something with her. Yeah, I'm sorry that I have my logo of the podcast up there.
No, that's what it
Is
should
it in
be.
the is it in the book out? Is it in let's see here. It's still not there.
I like
It's
your
my
logo.
StreamYard.
It is. It is. It's your yard.
No, it's just my StreamYard. That's
I
why
know.
my thing showed up. Um, so looking back at what you've done, right? Is there a certain situation that because you came in that there was something you saved? I mean, what do most people make a mistake on when you see? I mean, I know that's a huge statement or a huge question, but you know what I mean? You're like, most people forget to do this, or most people don't think about this before.
Most
Most people don't think about hiring a CFO. I'll tell you that. I
Well,
know
yeah,
that.
that's
Yeah.
that's that's a big part. Most people do their budgeting and planning by looking at their bank account, and that's it.
That's not how you do it.
No. I mean, if it's working for you, great. That means, you have enough cash. But they just they look at, okay, I've got X dollars in the bank, I'm still good, and they don't, it's like, I almost feel like it's like back in the day when we had actual checkbooks. Like, how often did you write in every single check in your checkbook? You might have, because you seem like you're a pretty good numbers guy, but
No, I didn't. I just knew what was coming and what was
right.
not. Yeah.
And so, and when you're a single person, or, not a company, and you do that, it's fine. There's only so many things that are going on that you know about. But when you're a company and you've got a lot of comings and goings, and you've got maybe, an American Express card that 5 employees have, and you don't know what, is going on with that. All of a sudden you've got like a huge bill, a Amex bill or something. Um, and it surprises you, and now you're like, oh shoot, how am I going to pay for that? But if you look at it with planning it ahead, and having a goal and a path and a plan, then it's easier to stay within those guardrails, rather than just driving down a road and hoping you don't go off into the ravine.
Yeah. And here I'll give an example. In my industry, the mortgage industry, right? We knew what we used to say, we'd have pipes, right? That's how many loans you had in for this month. And when I first got in, you'd have it for this month, next month, and 90 days, right? Because that's how the process would take. Now it's like 9 days from now it's closing, or 12 days from now closing.
Oh
There is
wow.
no, yeah. So we do stuff so fast, and like refinances are like 15 days. That's how brokers are. We'll just leave it at that. We could do it fast because we get out of the way, right? A large organization doesn't have that same get out of my way. They have systems in place that gets in the way. Same with the purchases. So now we're like, okay, so we used to know by having all this how much our sales are and what's coming in. Now we only know for the next 2 to 3 weeks. So it's much scarier than it used to be. Are you following what I'm getting
I
at?
am
You can
following.
go,
Yeah.
oh, it used to be like, oh, we're good. We have like this much for there. Now you're like, okay, I have this much for now. Well, how many more are we getting in? And this, because it's such a fast process now.
That's
It's not
crazy. Yeah.
30 to 60 days. People, if they write an offer for more than 21 days these days, that's, people are going, what's wrong with the buyer? What's wrong with the,
Oh my god.
right? I mean, they're writing offers for 15 days, no contingencies, no nothing, no anything.
Who are these people?
It's in California. Sorry.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
And it's, hundreds of thousands of dollars over asking.
Not as bad. these days, but that's how it was in the summer last year, but not this last summer. But it's kind of,
Wow, in the middle of a pandemic.
yeah, FOMO, fear of
Uh-huh.
it. And I just did a show yesterday about that in the real estate. Is this FOMO that everybody's trying to buy a house and get it in? And it really is fear of missing out on a house because we have no amount of enough houses in the market and enough of this and this. But this is not a show about real estate, so I'll just get off my little thing. It's just one of those things that it's huge though, and it affects everything.
Yeah. And it's a big change. It's a big pivot from what you were used to.
Yeah. I mean, that's what, so you also, as an owner, have to understand how your industry's changing and things are changing to stay with that and current. And a lot of people used to be able to go, yeah, that's no big deal. We're not changing much in 5 years. Now, that's like 6 months, a year. I mean, there's so much changing, so much faster that, and disruption that's happening, just like podcast production companies. Whoever thought they would be around?
Right? I know. It's pretty cool though. And they're popping up everywhere and everybody has a podcast. Like everybody's a broadcaster now, which is great.
They at least have 10 episodes.
You at least have 10 episodes, right?
Because that's usually when they quit. Because they realize how expensive it is for production to edit it, to do this, unless you do it yourself. It's expensive. I mean, it's at least
it's expensive and it takes a lot of time.
It's at least $250 just to edit it. Then you got to upload it. And then you got to do all the social media stuff on it. And you got to do all this on it, or it doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
Not all of us are Joe Rogan, where you can you're on TV, start a podcast and move and all the other MMA stuff and move it over to a podcast and people are there.
Right. So. Exactly.
I mean, I'm trying to get my radio listeners over, but they're all conservatives. They don't like coming over. I'm just kidding. It's most talk radio is all conservative people. So
that is true. True. I had ex-in-laws who owned a radio station and it was talk radio, and it was they were very not conservative, but a lot of their programs were.
Well, what are you going to do? It causes issues. So people listen, right? Nobody wants to listen to really nice, like, oh, you're so beautiful today. Oh, you're so nice today. Nobody wants to hear that.
No, they want to hear, they want to watch the war or listen to the war.
Yes. Or, I feel that way too. Darn it.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah. Anything else you want to leave our listeners today that we didn't hit on anything? Because this is your realm, not mine. I think we hit a lot of things about CFOs and bookkeepers and CPAs and EAs and what the difference is and how you help. Is there anything else you want to put in there before we go?
Just planning is everything. And, if you plan, then you can take chances, which sounds counterintuitive, but it actually makes a lot of sense, because if you actually have, like I was talking about the guardrails before, if you have those guardrails in place, it allows you to go anywhere back and forth and even hop out of that every once in a while, because you know where you're going ultimately. So planning is important.
At least you didn't say bumper guards.
Not bumper guards.
Bowling. Anyway. Not that I bowl, but some of us had to do that in their childhood.
Yes.
All right. Dorothy, it was great having you on the show today. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. I appreciate being a guest.
Thank you for joining us on Inner Edison today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and what our guest shared about being a fractional CFO. If you like what we do here, just follow and make sure you leave a review. Thank you.